Health is happening in Beaver County, along with news and weather with Curtis Walsh and sports with Matt Durzik. And now, here is the host of the show, Mike Romai.
And we thank you for being with us. Boy, the sun is shining. It's brilliant outside, and will continue to be all day long. So I hope you get a chance to enjoy it. Joining us now in studio are the folks from Rebuild Better Together. And it's an organization that is based in Beaver County, but they cover the greater Pittsburgh area also, from what I understand from your website, Pennsylvania and Maryland as well. Cindy Fox is here. Christopher Watson is here. And joining us on the phone is Jared Quinteros. Good morning and welcome to all of you. And thank you for coming in this morning. Really appreciate it. Just tell us a little bit about, as we begin the program, tell us about your organization.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Cindy and I had a mutual friend, Dennis, who was the inspiration for Rebuild Better Together. And Dennis experienced a spinal cord injury. And a few months after that injury, after his accident, he found himself without a family support system. His marriage had ended, and he ended up in a nursing home. And he had this deep desire and dream to get out of the nursing home and return to an independent living situation, to get his own apartment. And that dream became a reality on January 12th of 2021. And Dennis inspired us to start Rebuild Better Together to help pick up the pieces and be the support system for those who have lack family support or have lost their family support. And as you can imagine, navigating a spinal cord injury is incredibly hard and much more difficult without family support. So what we found is there's others like Dennis that ended up in his situation that would love to leave an institutional care facility and move back into a more familial environment. And Dennis left us. He passed away from complications on June 25th in 2021. But his legacy lives on today through this organization. And although he did lack family support, I can tell you he had a lot of really good friends that loved him and 3 daughters that cared for him and loved him very much too.
Explain that to me a little more, because it's one tragedy compounded by another. Dennis, was a motorcycle accident that occurred with Dennis?
It was a motorcycle accident he experienced on way to his first ever meeting at a church that I attended. We had a men's group that met there, and he was on his way to his first meeting there, had an accident.
He was paralyzed.
Yeah, it was significant paralyzation. From his neck down, he had...
was that quadriplegic?
He was a quadriplegic, and a high-level quadriplegic, and had very, very... significant injury.
It troubles me to find, and it may happen a lot, you have to be the experts on that then a marriage ends and you don't get family support. That seems like cruel and unusual punishment. What happens? Does it happen often?
Yeah, the percentage is really high, to be honest. The more that we learned about the spinal cord injury community, sometimes people just can't bring themselves to being a caretaker, or, and the caretaker's role as well.
It's a lot of work.
It's very difficult. It's a lot of work. And so you don't know until you go through the situation. And it's so unfortunate. And that's where we want to come in as Rebuild Better Together and just lift up that part of the community that have lost or lacked that family or spousal support by stepping in and providing comfort and
physical and emotional needs.
Physical and emotional needs.
So without placing blame on a spouse or any family members, it does compound the ability to navigate those injuries for sure.
Right.
In the sense that the patient, the individual who was paralyzed, has no control over their life for the most part at that point. But the spouse or the family members, maybe they just feel over their heads emotionally and physical in terms of having to deal with this on a daily basis.
Without question.
Yeah, and and it can come in so many forms, from someone just not being able to care for their family member because they emotionally can't do it, maybe somebody lived in a third floor apartment and they just can't, adapt that home, and the family can't take them back in. And we're going to hear from Jared Quinteros in a couple minutes and his situation, and it can come in so many different forms.
Yeah.
So-
Is there, besides you're a non-for-profit group, nonprofit organization, besides the work that you are doing, is there other help out there available for people, support, governmental or otherwise?
Oh my gosh, yeah, there's tremendous programs, and there's a lot of nonprofit support right in this area. And our desire and goal is to work in, unison with those other nonprofits, because we all have the same overarching desire and goal, is to just help the community that's, experienced a spinal cord injury.
And a lot of us just provide different avenues. And so what maybe we don't cover, we'll provide that resource for another organization.
These type of injuries can happen in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
I guess you're talking about Dennis just riding a motorcycle that day, and left the house, was going to a meeting, and then he's paralyzed for the rest of his life. And does that obviously happens a lot? People we don't expect it. We don't think it's ever going to happen to us, but there it is. And that goes to the rest of us who are not paralyzed. That by the grace of God, go I.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's estimates that it happens 100 times a day in this country, that people just like you and me, Mike, we're sitting here today as able-bodied people, and tomorrow we wake up to a new reality.
Yeah. And so what is the work that you do here within Beaver County?
So we're just a little bit under a year old. The first 8 months we spent doing regulatory paperwork, getting our social media online, and finalizing our mission, putting our board of directors together. And through all that, we immersed ourselves into the spinal cord injured community just to learn everything that we could, and also doing a lot of volunteer work within the community and other nonprofits, because we wanted to learn really how to run a successful nonprofit as well. That was really important to us. So our first program, we provided bags of comfort to those who were newly injured or just referred to us. And the comfort bags included a neck pillow and blankets, supplements, reading material. And then we provided emotional support, whether they needed someone to cut through red tape for them, navigate them in a different direction, just try and help them, come through this horrible situation. We also have a couple more programs a little bit further down the road, adaptive homes and adaptive gyms to support the spinal cord injured community. And although they're a little bit more capital intensive and a little further down the road, we are looking for donations for homes and houses and buildings and property to kind of shorten that path a little bit as well. And you can learn more about that on rebuildbettertogether.org about our programs.
You're in your infancy then, so you're
We
still
are.
learning. There's a
Yeah,
big learning curve
we are.
involved
We
with
are.
that.
Yeah.
And what are some of the challenges that you have met in the last year or since Dennis's accident, and what we'll find out about Jared as well, and so many others? What are you finding to be the challenges of that? Did you anticipate that this is going to be such a huge undertaking?
Yeah, and I'll answer that, and you might want to jump in too. But, we've had the help of so many wonderful people that are on our board of directors, and just a shout out to Helen Kissick, who is a very just longtime member of the
Helen? Yeah,
chamber and
sure.
such a great pillar of the community, has just been such a guide and a resource for us. And so she's helped navigate us and steer us in the right direction, and a lot of hurdles. And, so we talked to a lot of different nonprofits to kind of glimmer a little bit of information as to maybe what they struggle with in the beginning, so that we didn't have to fall on our faces a little bit, so to speak. But some of the challenges, just coming out of COVID, being able to get into nursing homes and rehabs and visit people was a little bit of a challenge, because those regulations and restrictions were still in place. So we did a lot of phone work and as much as what we could to provide the comfort that we could. And really the biggest challenge was just really trying to get in to visit those people that so much needed the emotional and physical support.
So you're saying over the past couple of years with COVID that you weren't able to get in to see those people, whether you wore masks or not.
Right. That's absolutely correct. Yeah. And those restrictions are really just have loosened recently. So,
And as hard as those restrictions were on us, people like Dennis, who was in a nursing home, he had the ability to have his good friends visit him. And when COVID hit, they were locked out, and he talk about being all alone. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was tragic.
Yeah, the Americans with Disability Act. It's been in place for a long time. Are there challenges that go along with that as well? Because you're talking about going into different facilities or finding housing or things like that. As far as the red tape is concerned, is that a jungle that you have to cut through as well?
Mike, well, if I may,
Sure.
Yeah,
go
I,
ahead.
please.
I think our next guest would be
He's
able
gonna
to
tell you a
speak
lot
would
about
be
that.
able to speak to that a little bit more in real terms than either Cindy and I would as able-bodied people.
Jared Quinteros is on the phone with us. Good morning, Jared.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming on with us this morning. As we spoke, and as I spoke to Cindy prior to coming on the program, I mentioned that our radio studio here is on the second floor. And there's like 23 steps that have to go up. We don't have elevators or that sort of thing. So in terms of being handicap accessible, that's this building. But tell us about the experiences that you have overall and have had. But first of all, tell my listening audience about your injuries and your plight to this point.
Yeah, who is this guy, Jared Quinteros, on the phone? Back in 21, June 17th it was, my wife and I went on a hike near our home over here in South Fayette. We ran over to Upper St. Clair to the Boyce Mayview trails over there. And we were about halfway through our hike and heard some cracks in the trees. And pretty much out of nowhere, we had a 1,000-pound limb fall on us from about 50 feet up in the air. Never saw it coming. My wife sustained a head injury that she later died from, and I was hit in the back at T12, and that's pretty much right in the center of your back, and it shattered my vertebrae and ripped my spinal cord in half. Left me in a wheelchair here for the rest of my life. Sometimes it's difficult to talk about, but but that has been quite the challenge, being a single father overnight to two boys and trying to navigate life here in a wheelchair all of a sudden, going from being an able-bodied person who's very capable to struggling to do things like change a light bulb. It's hard. So we talked about Dennis and his situation and being isolated and not having the support. My situation is a little bit different. Seems that I actually had a lot of support. The community really rallied behind me and helped in so many ways to provide, so many different things for me, helping to adapt my home. There was all kinds of meals brought for me and people taking care of my lawn to help me out. The first year was there was a lot of support there. And that's something that's kind of brought me to Cindy and Christopher here, is that what they're trying to provide is, these kind of things for people. For me, I realized early on how unique my situation was and felt it was only the right thing to try to give that back to the community and share that with other people and try to provide that. That's my situation. That's who I am.
Jared Quinteros, and we thank you for sharing a story as difficult as it is for you to share it with our listening audience, that inform us and keep us up to date on what is happening. You mentioned in your story, you said in the first year there was a lot of support. Does that have a tendency to fall away? People get busy with their own lives and can't devote as much attention or time to the problems that you may be having?
Absolutely. I think it's pretty common in many situations, whether, you lose a loved one, whatever kind of accident happens in somebody's life, tragedies, any of that, life continues on. And, I know that And, we all kind of understand that. So, yeah, in the beginning, there's always a lot of support. And after a year, things do, kind of start to fall away. Mainly, like you said, people's lives keep moving on, work, family. Everybody has a lot of other things that they need to take care of. And, I completely get that. I would have been right there with everybody else because, I have family to take care of too. Yeah. So I think that's a really common thread. In the first year is really important too because there's so much healing that needs to happen. So it's really good to provide that. And, down the road, it's nice if there are things that can sustain it a little bit better. But yeah, that's pretty common thread.
Yeah. Jared, you said your wife died from her injuries. What is more difficult, the physical limitations or emotional and the mental struggles that you've gone through for the past couple of years?
Honestly, it's living without my best friend. And it's hard not to get choked up every time I think about it or talk about it. I think if my wife was here and I was going through these struggles, she was my best friend for 18 years. That's the hardest part. Knowing that my kids are going to grow up without their mother. It's difficult.
Mm-hmm. Very tragic. And Cindy and Christopher, tell us, because Cindy, you're getting emotional as you've heard Jared's story in the past. Mm-hmm. Is this pretty common among people who are physically unable to do their everyday tasks? And because of the emotional support that maybe falls away, in Jared's case, his wife passed away. Right. So how important is that aspect of things?
Well, the thing is that watching Dennis and getting to know Dennis and everything that he went through, and it just, something just struck our hearts, to be a part of that, giving back and being immersed in the community as we were, so many different situations and watching those struggle from their injuries and then just trying to regain into society and get their emotions back in check. And then meeting Jared and Matt Berwick, our president of Rebuild Better Together, has just made us realize how fortunate we are and how, just being there to provide emotional support as much as what we can and help them through and navigate through their situation, whether it's just, a friendly phone call or visiting or going to lunch, just has been. Yeah,
we have about a minute left in the program, and I don't want to leave it without asking you about Kara.
Yeah.
Kara. What is that?
So Jared joined our board recently, and he has this tremendous, beautiful heart to give back to the community. There was people that stepped up like Stambrowski Homes and PJ Dick to help his house become accessible, and he wants to give those same resources back to the community. So he started a program called Kara, and it was in memory of his wife, whose name was Kara, and it's an acronym for keeping all residents accessible.
Okay. We are going to have to cut it at this point, but Jared, I want to thank you for being with us and telling that story. And Cindy, Christopher, if you could tell us how people could get in touch with Rebuild Better Together.
Yeah, we have rebuildbettertogether.org, and we have a huge fundraiser coming up on May 13th. It's a night at the races at the Hopewell VFW. Hope the community can join us.
And support us.
Support us. WBVP has been amazing giving us this platform. PJ Dick, Lamar Advertising, and Stambrowski Homes. Their support has been amazing, but that takes a back seat to the support they've driven into the community to help us with the spinal cord injured community. And again, rebuildbettertogether.org.
Thank you.
Please
thank you so much,
Mike. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're listening to 1230 WBVP, 1460 WMBA. Beaver County Radio. It's 9 o'clock.
Here's the way for former Vice President Pence to testify about the events leading up to the U.S. Capitol riot.
A U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals panel rejected a bid by Donald Trump to block his former Vice President Mike Pence from testifying before the grand jury that for months has been investigating